Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everybody attending. Here we are on the 110th episode of Areopa webinars, our platform from the perspective of BC development. And in this session, Tine and Waldo will take you through their perspective of it. This is our first episode of season 7. So it's a whole new season. For those who attend more often know the housekeeping rules that your mic is muted. You can ask questions in the question bar of the GoToWebinar app, and we will pick those questions up, and later on, at the end of the session, we will ask them. This webinar will be recorded and is recorded and will be later on published on our YouTube channel, Areopa Webinars. If you want to be in the loop for more of what Areopa and Areopa Webinars is doing, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and you can use this link here on this slide to get a member of this newsletter. Upcoming webinars, season 7, the next webinars after this is on Monday, the 15th of September, the cost of fully written AI code by Stefan. And then on September the 29th, 7 or so AI killer prompts to change your daily life as functional consultants by Jose. October 13th, my customer has performance problems, what do I do, by Waldo. On November 10th, extending the backend of Business Central AI agents with Azure AI Foundry by Katarina and Artem. November 24, 43 dev tips in 45 minutes by Milian and Luc. And December 8th, you don't have to make test plans anymore by Tine and Luc. So if you want to register for one of these, please go to the website as shown on top of this page, the areopa.academy, and you can there register for all these webinars. And we are continuously looking for speakers and topics, so if you have suggestions, please contact. So these details you find on this Areopa Academy website. Thanks to our sponsor for using their go-to platform and all kinds of other big support they do for us. So now let's go quickly to Tine and Waldo because they have a full schedule.
So let's get started. And I'm going to go one back. So yeah, thank you for having me, Gert. And obviously Luc and the Areopa team. And I guess I'm speaking for Tine as well. It's always an honor to be here and to be invited and to share this, can I say, exciting topic. Power Platform from the perspective of a Business Central developer. Now, the reason why I do this session with Tine is pretty much because of Tine. He challenged me like, hey, you have been talking about this Power Platform as Power Fluff. So why don't you just explain why you do that? And I told him like, look, I won't. Or you do that with me. So that's pretty much a little bit on why we started to think about pretty much this question, the next one. Why are we still not really using the Power Platform as much as people have been talking about it, right? This was actually quite an interesting journey. And in my opinion, we came across some, let's say, facts, practices that we think are good and bad, which we actually would like to share with all of you. So how do we pretty much handle Power Platform as Business Central partners, users, customers, and not. I'm Waldo. I'm coming from that Business Central, let's say, area. I've been there for far too long, probably 22 years. So one of the dinosaurs, I guess. And Tina, maybe you should.
I was 6 when you started. But yeah, so my name is Tine Starič. I said if Waldo gets a nickname, I'll have one too. That's why you can see Tine in my name. I'm also on the BC side of things, but unlike Waldo, I don't call Power Platform Power Fluff. So I'm here to kind of balance out the opinion, so it's not too one-sided.
Yeah, and you will see that it's not that one-sided on my end as well, I hope. So yeah, let's continue. So we divided a little bit of sections, and the first section that we would like to cover a little bit is the challenges in the world of software developers. What do we see as challenges when we develop software? I'm not focusing on any kind of particular software, not talking particularly on Business Central or Power Platform. It's just in general software. When you're a partner, how do you do software and what is important? Well, I think first of all, repeatability is important. The fact that we are able to create products and we can create those products for multiple customers makes us efficient in software development, makes us, let's say, at least more successful. Yeah, but to be able to do that, obviously, that software needs to be deliverable in a fast way. So we need to be able to implement that software easily. We need to be able to maintain and update that software easily. Yeah, so that's definitely one of the challenges that we have. How do we do that? How do we create software that is maintainable and so on and so on? Next, when we talk about maintainability, we obviously look into automation. We look into CI/CD pipelining. We do look into automated testing because software is not deliverable and maintainable when we need to do manual testing. So that's something that we need to take care of. Obviously, also, how do I access these multitude of environments and all that? In terms of Business Central, for instance, we have this GDAP kind of approach. And also, how do we get feedback? How do we get in touch with maybe the customers or how the product is doing? Yeah, and obviously we look into telemetry as an example for that. Other thing that we need to take into account is the customization part. I'm gonna guess most of people that are listening now or would watch the video at a later point come from a Business Central angle, and we're all into customization, simplicity. But Business Central was easy to customize and all that. But I don't want to make this a Business Central thing. In a way, any kind of piece of software that you would use as a user, or any customer that we have that we sell our software for, I mean, I think we can all agree that they are never 100% happy with the software they get. Even us using the software, any kind of software, we always have suggestions for different things. And how do we handle that, right? How do we handle this customization is yet another challenge that we need to cover in software deliverables or as a software provider. So when we now map all of this to the Business Central world, let me try to explain in a really small nutshell what Business Central is. Well, I obviously asked ChatGPT or Grok, or I don't know anymore what I asked. And I mean, we can all agree it's a cloud-based all-in-one ERP to automate well, finance, sales, inventory, or any kind of other business process. Yeah, that's pretty much what we do. And as I talked about, it also has that customization layer. We have this extensibility, let's call it framework, that we are able to use to extend the platform that we get out of the box. And when we do that, we can even do that a way that is maintainable and all that. We are in line of everything that we need to be successful. So when we take this extensibility and we make there a picture of kind of like out of the box, Microsoft actually delivers quite an extensive amount of apps already, right? But if you just focus on the ones that we are really interested in, like the base app and system app, obviously there are a lot more. But what we can do as a software provider is we can extend them, and we can build our own products, like logistics product, ADI products, something very technical for scale, so I can weigh stuff and register that in Business Central. And even more than the second product developer would be able to extend yet one app of another product developer. So, I mean, there is an infinite amount of layers that we can implement and actually create products for. Yeah, and there's even a different layer that we can do customer customization, where we do some customizations to products or even the base app or any other app from Microsoft. Yeah. And then once in a while, you have this ISV that kind of like create this kind of app that pretty much depends on everything. And even that is possible, right? And even that, if you're careful, you can maintain, you can upgrade, you can actually get it to every next version of Business Central and of any other next version of any other product or ISV app. Yeah. So when we look a little bit into the development methodology, you must remember this. Back in the days, especially, I mean, this is where I come from, then back in the days where we shipped FOB files to production more than we would have liked, or you had this local hero at some point that actually was sitting on the production environment and just did like software development within production environment. I mean, we have seen it all. We moved from that, and now these days we can implement a decent methodology where we have these multiple developers working on the same project but in different development environments, where everything comes together with some kind of pipeline, deploying it to test environments, deploying it to app source or whatnot. And when users are using it, we are getting that feedback that we really need into telemetry or whatnot that we would need. So we moved really into this, let's say, mature architecture that we need to be able to be that successful. And we were all, as a Business Central partner, we all get used to this or got used to this, and we are doing this. So what does that mean for the Power Platform, Tine?
Okay, so Waldo explained how some parts of how Business Central solves those software development challenges he introduced at the beginning. But now let's take a look at how Power Platform solves some of those challenges. But I do kind of have to start with a disclaimer, which is we could be completely wrong, right? We are coming from the world of BC, but the title of the session did say that we're looking at Power Platform through the eyes of a BC developer. And we're not going to use this disclaimer to spread misinformation, but it might mean that the way we see Power Platform is not the same way that Power Platform's people see Power Platform. So the first question is then, how do we see Power Platform? Usually when we talk about what is Power Platform, we start with this heavily packed sentence, which is a low-code platform to build apps, automate workflows, analyze data, and integrate systems. Now, this is not necessarily wrong. This is what Power Platform is. But I think this sentence does not really do it justice because it's too packed. So I found a picture on one of Microsoft's blogs where they specify that Power Platform is the world's most complete platform for developer productivity, spanning no code to bro code. Now, this was better. I think it visualizes a bit more what is captured under the term Power Platform. But here, I think they went in the opposite direction and they've added too many things. Because whenever I talk with people, should we go for Power Platform or shouldn't, we don't really talk about managed environments or connectors. Those are more features of the Power Platform, not really components that we discuss should we adopt them or not. So let me take those away. Next, I'm going to take away the AI parts, the Copilot and Copilot Studio. Now, I know Copilot Studio is here because it used to be called Power Virtual Agents, which was a proper component of the Power Platform. But now I think that these AI tools are constructing their own story. Plus, whenever we talk about do you use Power Platform, nobody really means are you talking to Copilot or not. So let's take those away. This would be the more traditional Power Platform. But even here, I'm going to take Power BI away, partially because, well, we quite like Power BI. We never have a problem with Power BI. We use Power BI outside of Business Central. We use Power BI within Business Central. So we like Power BI. And I also think that Fabric might steal Power BI away from Power Platform. And what we're left with is like the Power Apps, the Power Automate, the Power Pages, and how everything sits on top of Dataverse. This is how we usually understand Power Platform when you're coming from a Business Central environment. But even here, we do have to make one more distinction. Power Apps, one logo, one name, but in reality, it's two different things. It's Canvas apps and it's model-driven apps. And I know that in the Power Platform world, most of the use cases are done through model-driven apps. But for Business Central partners, anything that could be a good use case for model-driven apps, we can usually do ourselves within AL faster and better, but simply because we already know AL. So the Power Platform, as we see it, as we know it, as we talk about it, is this: Canvas apps, Power Automate, Power Pages, and Dataverse. So it's not this huge Power Platform umbrella that everyone else talks about. It's this smaller subset that we actually think of. So Waldo explained the development methodology that we have on the Business Central side. You know, this lovely complex graph on the left side of the slide. We spent years perfecting it. Maybe it's not perfect, but we spent years moving away from the fact that we shipped FOB files directly to production servers. And then when at some point Power Platform came along and said, hey, start using Power Platform now. It's simple, it's low code. Well, it makes me feel a bit weird because yes, it's simple, it's low code, but what about pipelines? What about telemetry? What about automated testing? All of that should be part of Power Platform as well. It's not all about low code. Now, to be completely honest, the right side of the picture, the Power Platform side of the story, looks exactly the same as the left side does. Power Platform developers have their sandboxes. They have their own version control systems. They use their pipelines. They have automated testing. They have telemetry as well. But the messaging that I'm trying to push against is that you don't just simply use Power Platform. You have to invest in the development methodology for Power Platform as well. And even though I've used the same icons on the left and the right side, the same pipeline icon, these are not the same pipelines. Now, that doesn't mean that our pipelines are good, their pipelines are bad, or their pipelines are good and ours are bad. It just means they're different. And to go for Power Platform, you have to invest some time in getting to know how things work on the Power Platform side of things. So development methodology, it's fully present on the Power Platform side of the story as well. You just need to take the time to get to know it. When we come to the extensibility point of Power Platform, I really liked the animation that Waldo had on the BC slides, so I decided to simply copy it and use it here as well, because the story is more or less the same. You have your Microsoft Power Apps, and ISVs can extend those apps, and then other ISVs can extend the previous ISVs. And you don't really call them per tenant extensions, but you can create managed solutions specifically for one customer, specifically for their tenant. And you also have chaos apps, which you would call an unmanaged solution in the Power Platform world. So the extensibility story is there. The problem, however, is that this extensibility story, this layering cake, it applies to model-driven apps. And as I've said some time ago, model-driven apps are not what we use as BC partners. We primarily use Canvas apps. And with Canvas apps, the extensibility story is much weaker. With Canvas apps, you're basically left just with a chaos app or a Canvas app, because you can either download the app from App Source and you can use it as it is, which means you have no customizability. The customer just gets the app that you've published to App Source, or you can actually clone that app and then customize it for a specific customer, but that means you lose on the upgradability part. So extensibility, yes, but just not really for the parts that we use. And the last topic I want to touch on from the Power Platform side are citizen developers. You know, the idea that somebody who's not professionally a developer can come in and start making changes to the solution. If you think about it, in the NAV times, we had that as well. You had consultants that could go into the code base and make some changes. Sometimes that was good because adding a field was much faster for them. But sometimes that was also bad because they really didn't follow the development methodology if you had any. So when we switched to Business Central, we decided to move away from that. We decided to split the roles where consultants consult and developers develop. So when Power Platform came in with the idea that, hey, anyone can be a developer again, we didn't really appreciate it. We didn't like that. And I have another story when it comes to citizen developers. I've heard this quote. I've built a very complex set of Power Automate flows that became the backbone of our sales department. When I left, it all fell apart. Do you know who said this quote? I said this quote. Before I decided to go full-time into a BC developer role, I worked in a sales department for a company where I saw that we're doing so many things manually. And when I came across Power Automate, I realized that, well, I can automate a lot of these things. And then the stakeholders, they liked it. So we added even more complexity to those Power Automate flows. We had nested conditions within nested conditions, within nested conditions, within nested conditions. And then at some point, I kind of realized I like this software thing. Maybe I shouldn't be in sales. Maybe I should pursue that. So I decided to leave. And that's where the problem started, because I've used zero best practices. It's not only about complexity that nobody didn't really know how to maintain those flows. The worst practice that I've used is that all of the flows were running under my own named account. And you can kind of think about what would happen if we didn't figure that one out before they deleted my account. And this is all to kind of say that citizen developers, the story might work in enterprises because enterprises have IT departments. They have centers of excellence, people who can teach citizen developers best practices, people who can oversee worst practices and catch them before something bad happens. But Business Central partners, we work in the SMB space, and I just don't think it works there because A, our customers don't really have IT departments that would have space to handle citizen developers. And as partners, we also cannot take that responsibility onto ourselves. So if we just quickly recap this Power Platform part, first, the Power Platform, as we see it from the BC perspective, is not that huge umbrella of everything. It's a small subset of apps or Power Platform features that we use. The development methodology is there, but it's different from the one that we know, which doesn't make it bad, it just makes it different, and we need to take the time to learn it. The extensibility story is there, but not for the parts that we use. And citizen developers, we've been down that road, and we decided we don't want to go down that road again. So, Waldo, tell us what happens if we combine the two.
Yeah. So now we have seen both platforms separately, all with their let's say possibilities and challenges. But what if we combine both? So we are going to do a project, and we're going to use Business Central and the Power Platform within that project. And again, we will talk a little bit on a few challenges that we have to overcome in that perspective. First is deployment. We're going to have to deploy both the Business Central app or apps, and we're going to have to deploy Power Platform. And you can already guess, at this point, there is no combination or combined installation, right? So we're going to have to do that separately. And which one goes first? I mean, if we would install Business Central and then install Power Platform, if Power Platform fails, what happens with Business Central? How do we roll back? Or vice versa, if we do Power Platform first, it's not going to work because Business Central is not there yet. So and what if Business Central fails? So there is something that we obviously need to manage at that point. Yeah. Now, as one comment here for Business Central is not able to roll back. We are not able to install a previous version. So if we would have to roll back Business Central, we would kind of like create a new version with the previous version of our code, which is cumbersome. On Power Platform level, we got informed, and there is a possibility to roll back. At least that is the information that we got, although it is very cumbersome and it's not easy. So obviously, this deployment thing is something we need to make sure that it will not fail on neither end, and we have to make sure that it exists, that it will succeed. The second thing I would like to address is validation. And when we talk of validation, we obviously talk tests. The ability of running tests, either we not run tests, we do tests manually, but no, when we do decent software development or mature software development, we obviously do automated tests. Now, both solutions have abilities to do automated tests, right? In Business Central, we already have out of the box lots and lots of tests. And as we all do, obviously, we all write our own tests for our own software. And if you do not, well, you should. For Power Platform, it's pretty much the same. In Power Platform, you have the Canvas Apps Test Studio. And probably for that, you'll have lots of apps and lots of tests as well. But one thing we know for sure, we have 0 tests for the combination of Business Central and Power Platform. Yeah. And that is obviously something we need to overcome. Now, what do we do? Yeah. What do we do in terms of deployment and validation? Well, as we already addressed that both have quite an extensive development methodology or the possibility to have that, what we are able to do is create pipelines that kind of like deploy and test Business Central, which also is able to deploy and test. Remember, both sides have testability or have the ability to have automated tests. So we can run them in isolation. Yeah. And what we can then do is install yet another environment or deploy to a yet another environment and test there. Kind of like an integration test. And obviously, since we have pipelines, we can do pretty much the same for the production environment as well in terms of deployment. Again, deployment, there was no way even in a pipeline to deploy at the same time, to let one deployment be dependent from another deployment and so on. There was no rollback, but yeah, obviously that's why you need the test environment, the sandboxes, to be able to know that whatever you would deploy to production, that you have most chances of success. Yeah. Pretty much the same story for app source. Before you deploy anything to app source, and in this case, when you would have an app source ISV offering that has both a Business Central app and a platform app, you would have to go through the same process to know if everything will succeed. So the main thing here is, I think it's quite obvious, is pipelines. And yeah, I think we should all agree that a system should never be modified manually ever. It should always go through some kind of pipeline, because you cannot make sure that a person has enough discipline, let's say, to go through all the steps that they need to go through before deploying to live. So pipelining is quite central here. Yeah. Next part, extensibility. Remember, the topic here is when we combine both Business Central and Power Platform. So we already know this extensibility platform for Business Central, it's apps, right? And Tine already talked about this layering of model-driven apps. But I think we all agree that from the moment we would create a model-driven app, that we have to question ourselves, why are we doing this while we have Business Central to develop our model-driven application that we need? So if we would do that, it's going to be Canvas apps, and Tine already addressed this, which do not have extensibility. So what options do we have, right? There is no extensibility. So what do we do in this case? How do we make sure that at least there is some kind of extensibility? Well, first of all, I will start with what we don't do. We don't clone. That is a very bad practice. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, what you can always do is when you would install an app source Canvas app, you would be able to clone that app and make it into, let's say, a managed solution, right? In that case, it's not attached to any kind of app source offering anymore, and it's just your own. It's kind of like you copy the app and you make it your own, and you can do your extended thing that you need to do. We're talking about extensibility here. Very big downside here is that, I mean, you break upgradability and maintainability, right? So you break the connection with the app source app. So whenever the ISV solution would be updated, you don't get that because you cloned it. You don't get those updates. Very hard to maintain. So what else? What can we do? Well, in a way, customizations become features, right? We need to try to predict. We need to play the prediction manager to predict what customizations customers could ask for. Do they need a customized logo? Do they need to be able to add fields and have some more data? Well, then we already add those fields, and we make it possible to configure the app that they have a customized logo and these kind of things. So customization is not development at that point. Customizations is a configuration of some kind. Yeah. Next point is licensing, but I'm going to give that to Tine.
Yeah, let me take licensing. I love the picture though. Okay. Licensing. I've got two topics that I want to talk about. Where are the main licensing differences between BC and Power Platform? The first one, the most common one, is multiplexing. But I'm not gonna go through the definition of what is multiplexing, because I've created a nice little animation that's gonna help us understand where the problem comes from. If we start with one simple example, where we have a Power App that's created on top of the data that's in Dataverse, and we have 15 users of that Power App, I think it's quite clear that we are going to need 15 licenses for the Power Apps. The story is also kind of simple on the BC side. If we've got Business Central and we have 3 users that use Business Central, we're going to need 3 Business Central licenses. Now, everything starts to get a bit more murky when you create a Power App that's using the data from Business Central. It's not a problem for the people on the right side. With Essential and Premium Business Central licenses, you get limited usage rights for Power Apps. which means the 3 people on the right, they do not need an additional license to be able to use the apps on the left. However, the people on the left side, they do need a license for Business Central. As soon as a Power App is using data from Business Central, the users of that app need to be appropriately licensed within Business Central. It doesn't matter if the integration is the out-of-the-box BC Dataverse synchronization, or if it's virtual tables, or if it's APIs, or if it's Power Automate, it doesn't matter. If a Power App is using or modifying data from Business Central, then the users need to have a license. And the problem is the users on the left side, they won't get an error saying you do not have an appropriate license. Everything is going to work fine for them. But just because it works does not mean it's allowed. And the second part of the licensing differences that is, let's say, the most common differentiator for a BC partner is something called the GDAP, or Granular Delegated Admin Permissions. Now, the way GDAP works is, well, I have another animation for that. If you as a partner want to service your customer, you want to go within Business Central and change some settings in their admin center or change some settings in the application itself, the customer doesn't have to buy an additional BC license for you or your people as a partner. What they do is they grant this GDAP to you, and with granular delegated admin permissions, you can then go into their environment and service whatever you need to service. So essentially, serving our customers is free of charge, at least from the licensing perspective. Now, if we take a look at how the story looks like on the Power Platform side, it's slightly different. Power Platform also has the concept of GDAP. However, it only works when you try to change some things around in the Power Platform admin center. If you would try to change a Power Automate flow or make a change to the Canvas app, the GDAP is no longer enough. And what you actually need is to have a full license within the customer's tenant. So what do we do? For multiplexing, I'm going to keep it simple. Those are just the rules of the game. Microsoft said that if you build an app that uses data from BC, then you need to have a license, then that's simply the cost of building apps on top of Business Central. But for the second point, for the GDAP, for anything Power Platform, the customers buy an additional license for every developer from our side that would have to work on their apps. Usually, well, not usually, every time that was not an issue with customers. It's not a blocker because the cost of a Power Platform Maker license is $20, which is 4 times cheaper than the $80, which is the cost of a license for Business Central. But it is something you want to be upfront about. And BC partners often realize mid-project that, hey, GDAP doesn't work the way GDAP's supposed to work. So it's better that you understand that, well, GDAP is going to work differently, and you simply explain this to the customers that there will be an additional cost for the people working on their apps. So those are the 2 things I wanted to tell you about licensing.
Yeah, and just for the record, I mean, it's not like I didn't want to do licensing. It's just that Tine really wanted to do licensing. Right?
No, I work for a company that does licensing. I have to take that topic.
Yeah, you actually like licensing. Wow. Different kind of guy. Anyway, let's go into a development environment. So again, topic here is Power Platform in combination with Business Central, or Business Central in combination with Power Platform. We already know, right? When we develop Business Central, we have these environments that we would like to test it from. These are like online environments. We have these 3 sandboxes, so we are able to do that. But we also know that as developers, we have these Docker environments that we like and we like to set up. So we have a multitude of developers, a multitude of Docker environments, and even more Docker environments that we are able to set up, test, and do whatever in. It's a very flexible system to implement and to basically be able to be as efficient as at all possible. But when Power platform comes into play, that's where things get really isolated, because from the moment we need to develop on something that is connected to anything Power Platform, well, then we need to connect an environment to Power Platform, and that's where we cannot use Docker, and we need to use like an online sandbox. And usually there's just one that we can connect, because we need that other test system, we need those other sandboxes. Although obviously this is nothing new. Any kind of integrations to any kind of server, we pretty much had to set up that, and one developer was able to work on that. Now let's switch things around. When we look into the Power Platform, also Power Platform developers are very flexible. They can set up like an infinite amount of environments for them to do their development workflow, right? Developers can have their own isolated environment per feature or whatnot. They have their test environments where they deploy to, and so on. And if they would integrate with Business Central, well, it's Business Central that limits them. Yeah, so it's not a limitation from Power Platform. It's basically a limitation to set up any kind of integration to any kind of software. So in a way, what do? Well, we simply split development tasks. One developer can work on the integration with Power Platform, and all the others pretty much don't. Yeah, maybe you would be able to split different tasks, different integration tasks, but even that is quite difficult. As you know, you can only deploy, one developer can deploy to one sandbox, and if you have like multiple features being developed at the same time, deploying to that one sandbox will bring breaking changes, which basically doesn't work, and you have problems. So that's why you need to split development tasks. When we talk about developing for both platforms, we need to talk about obviously Dataverse as well. Now, Dataverse, as you probably know, it's basically the database for multiple services in not just the Power Platform, but also sales and customer service. And basically, Business Central is very isolated from that. Business Central has their own database. It's a SQL Server database. It's not on Dataverse. Yeah, and from the moment that we need to set up some kind of integration, well, we need to do some effort. We need to set stuff up. This stuff could be the data sync or the sync. How is it? I think the official name is the data sync. Or we can do some custom development with virtual tables, with APIs. Maybe we can set stuff up with Power Automate, but it involves effort. The data is not just there, and to be able to do that, we need these kind of practices. We need to set up these services to be able to have all of that Business Central data available for the different services that are connected to Dataverse. Yeah, and then you might ask, like, okay, we have all these possibilities. Well, in short, there is kind of like a hierarchy that we would like to apply, and that is like, if at all possible, we will implement the data sync. It's a good system, it's a flexible system, it's a stable system. It's a synchronization that synchronizes back and forward to Dataverse. Yeah. If there's anything that we cannot do with the data sync, we will look into the virtual tables. We will make an API Business Central, which can be consumed in Dataverse. You might ask, why not just use virtual tables all the time? Well, because managing and maintaining virtual tables is not easy, especially when you do updates to those virtual tables. You come across synchronization challenges, breaking changes, apps that are dependent from stuff that you don't have anymore in your virtual tables, and these kind of things. So that's why the hierarchy: data sync first, then virtual tables. And if that is not possible, well, then I might look into custom APIs with default connectors. And if that is really not possible, I will go into custom connectors. We usually don't need them, usually. And we try to push as much as at all possible to the data sync. So some configurations in terms of Dataverse, which I would like to share as well. Avoid bidirectional anything. Well, I think this is an obvious one, but avoid it. In terms of speed of synchronization, talk to your customers. There is a delay. Talk about 10 minutes. Don't talk seconds. Don't talk 1 minute. Talk 10 minutes. That's what customers. You need to plant that into your customers' expectations. Yeah. And in terms of synchronous and asynchronous processing, well, encourage the async processing. Yeah. Most integrations don't need these instant stuff. So, Tine, let the platform shine.
Okay, so we've seen Business Central a bit, we've seen Power Platform a bit, and we've seen where the friction points are when you try to bring the two together. But so that we don't end up on, let's say, a negative note, we decided that the next section is going to be where does Power Platform really shine for BC partners, and where it's worth to go through all of the trouble, when it's worth to go through all of the friction points that we just introduced. The first example is Power Automate. Like Power Automate shines everywhere, but to me, the biggest highlight of Power Automate are the triggers that come with it. For example, if you would like to react to when an email comes into a mailbox, from AL, you cannot do that. But with Power Automate, you have these triggers, these hooks that can hook onto an email app. So when an email arrives, you react to it. Or when a form is submitted, you react to it. Or when a row is updated in Dataverse, you react to it. In Business Central, we do have the concept of webhooks, but these are webhooks for other external applications to hook onto Business Central. Business Central has no capability to actually hook on to other apps. So the first example of where does Power Platform really shine, it's whenever you need to hook on to an event that happens outside of BC. But Power Platform can go further than that. I really like it for simplifying non-critical integrations. Take, for example, something trivial, like when something happens in Business Central, we would like to send a message to a Teams channel. Now, this is something that we absolutely could do with AL code. We could create the Teams setup table. We could create the Teams setup page. We could create the code unit, which would implement the procedure to get the access token, to send the channel message, to handle the HTTP request. We could do all of that. Or we could use two blocks in Power Automate. When something happens in Business Central, post a message in a chat or channel. So it really shines for simplifying non-critical integrations. Now, if you have critical integrations, don't go for Power Automate. There was a session at last year's Directions by Mats titled, "It's Power Automate, not Power Integrate." When you have critical integrations, do build them in AL or go for Power Integrate, which you would more commonly know as logic apps. So the first place where Power Platform shines, Power Automate for all sorts of scenarios. Then we have these Canvas apps. Why do Canvas apps shine for BC? Well, it's because BC does have a mobile app. Let's call it BC Mobile, but it's not the simplest to use. Imagine that you are, let's say, a field worker. What you have to do today is go in all of your offices and see if all of your fixed assets are still where they're supposed to be. If all the tables are there, if all the chairs are there, if all the computers are there. You could do that through the BC Mobile app, but you would have to navigate like 14 different menus just to find one field that you want to edit. With a Canvas app, you can do it in a much more simplistic view. because you can expose only the fields that this field worker has to see. You can only give them buttons that they have to press. And Canvas apps really are a godsend for field workers. But it's not only because they can simplify the UI. One huge benefit is also offline mode. Because let's move away from offices. Let's imagine that you are a warehouse worker in some secluded location where the warehouse is placed. There's no mobile data, and you're in some weird corner where Wi-Fi doesn't work either. The BC mobile app is not going to look like the screenshot on the right side. It's actually going to look like this. The mobile app only works when you are connected to the internet. On the other side, Canvas apps, they don't really care. Canvas apps can work in offline mode, and you can do all of your work in the warehouse. And once you're back online, you can click the sync button, and all of that data will be transferred back to Business Central. So you can see that Canvas apps are really a good match for field workers. But to drive that point even further, I have prepared 3 different use cases that the partners I've talked to or partners I've worked with have implemented using Canvas apps. The first one comes from James, an incredibly tall guy that you might have seen if you've ever been to one of the Direction events. What they have done is they have used Canvas apps to build a mobile app for fishermen that have to go out to the sea each morning where they're trying to catch lobsters. And when they catch a lobster, they have to take a picture of that lobster to see if it's big enough to be harvested or if they have to throw it back into the ocean. Now here on the slides, you can see a fisherman Waldo. Imagine if he had to navigate the Business Central mobile app. It would be a hassle. But because Canvas apps allowed them to simplify the UI in a way that it's convenient for the fishermen, that's why they have another way to collect that data. And the cool part is also that out at the sea, you don't have internet connection. But as soon as they come close to the shore, they can sync all of that data back to Business Central, and the markets, the fisheries that actually sell these lobsters, they know what kind of inventory is coming in way before the boats are actually make all the way back to the fisheries. The second example comes from Waldo's company. It was a delivery fleet where the delivery personnel, they deliver the package, but once they deliver it, they take a picture of it with a Canvas app. The Canvas app captures the GPS information plus the picture of the delivered package, and that's used as a proof of delivery within Business Central. That's something we couldn't have done with just AL. And the third example is from sorry, Waldo made these pictures before the session, and I like how he made me the cleaning person in this one. It was with a partner that rents out vacation homes. Once the customer leaves a vacation home, the cleaning person comes in, they clean the whole thing up, and once they're done, in the app, they simply either call a technician if something's broken, or they say the vacation home is ready for the next customer. And that means the front office immediately knows that someone else can come in to the vacation home. They don't have to wait for the cleaning person to bring a large amount of papers to the front office so they can figure out what's available and what's not. So these were some examples of where Canvas apps can really shine for BC use cases. It's mainly all about the field workers here. The third part are Power Pages. Power Pages, in like 2 sentences, it's a platform that allows you to create external facing websites. So if a customer wants to have a website where people could come in and see what kind of items they offer, or maybe they would want to place an order, that's something that we couldn't do with just AL. But Power Pages allows us a simple way how to create that website on top of BC data. Just for the fun of it, right now AI coding is the hottest thing around. I did try to get GitHub Copilot to build me a web page in AL, and obviously it didn't work. because you can't create a web page in AL because AL is meant for augmenting BC. It's not meant for creating web pages. But that's why Power Pages here shine, because it's much easier to create a website with Power Pages than it would be to create it from scratch. Now, you can see that all three sections, like Power Automate, Canvas Apps, and Power Pages, they all heavily rest on the fact that these are some things that we couldn't have done before with just AL. But I don't think that's a good enough argument. Why should we go for Power Platform? Simply because we couldn't have done things without them. I think the real question is, why do we want to enable these scenarios like the fisherman story or the cleaning person story? I think the answer here is that data collection is key. For too long, we focused on just the accountants and how we can make Business Central better and nicer and faster for the accountants that sit behind the desk entering data into journals. As soon as you start thinking beyond that, beyond the people who are sitting at the desk, and you start to think where else in your company you're collecting information that could have been captured within Business Central, that's when you start to see that Power Platform can unlock a lot of these scenarios. Forms that you send to your customers so they can enter their billing information and that automatically gets sent to BC. Or fishermen taking pictures of lobsters and that ends in BC. Or Power Page portals where people can submit their own orders. So data collection is something that we've previously only limited to the people behind a desk, behind a computer, and with Power Platform, we can extend it much further. And since we're coming to the end of the hour, let's go through a couple of key takeaways from today's webinar. The first thing that I would like you all to take away here is that we should stop looking at Business Central and Power Platform as these two islands, one on the left side, one on the right side, where we have our blessed programming language and they have their barbarous programming language. We have our heroic debugging efforts, they have their brutish quick fixes. Our noble design patterns, their backwards legacy code, our great abstractions and their primitive workarounds, or our glorious syntax and their wicked indentation rules. Because it's just two different islands. It's not that one's better than the other. Each one serves a different purpose. And honestly, it's quite often vice versa, right? We sometimes see Power Platform as being the limited child. But I know when I talk with Power Platform people, they sometimes have the same opinion of Business Central. So I would like you to kind of change this perception that it's not one or the other. It's just two different platforms for two different purposes. Next, when we were done with all of our slides, we threw the whole presentation into ChatGPT and we said, can you summarize this whole presentation into one sentence? And this is what it came up with. Bringing Power Platform and BC together, plan it, pipeline it, or prepare for pain, which I quite liked because there really is a huge focus on pipelines. You need pipelines to ensure that the deployment is going to be successful. You need pipelines to ensure that the validation goes through. And if you are going to go for this joint story, be sure that you spend enough time learning how the pipelining pieces work, because that's going to save you a lot of trouble. Next, remember that you don't just do Power Platform without making a mess. We saw the left side of development methodology for Business Central, but if you go for Power Platform, you need the right side of the development methodology figured out as well. Because it's the same thing with Business Central. You don't just do Business Central without making a mess. We spent our years figuring out how we're going to develop for Business Central in a proper way, and we should do the same thing for Power Platform. And finally, like I've mentioned before, Power Platform is not here to replace some elements of AL, replace some elements of Business Central, in my opinion. It's here to help us with the data collection. It's here to help us expand into opportunities that we previously didn't have without it. And with that, we're at the end. So thank you very much for listening. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the question box, and Waldo and I will be happy to take them.
Thank you, Waldo and Tine, for this great insight. And yes, we have some questions. One is from Jeffrey Bulanadi. Between multiplexing risk and GTAB limitations, how do you balance automation, access, and compliance with scaling BC with Power Platform? Who wants to take it? I guess it's Tine. Licensing.
We balance automation, access, and compliance when scaling BC with Power Platform. So with multiplexing risks, there are no multiplexing risks as long as you understand that anyone who's going to be using the app, which is based off of BC, needs to have a license for Business Central as well. Honestly, when you present it that way to the customer, if they take it, they accept the fact that it's going to be 2 licenses that they have to buy. One thing is that quite often you can get away with just having a team member license for the BC access piece. I like, for me, the multiplexing problem in our whole industry comes from the fact that multiplexing is not enforced. It's not technically enforced, which means some partners can propose a deal where they say, we're going to build you a Power App, and you don't need to buy a BC license for it. And the struggle is more that it's very hard for partners that do follow the licensing guide to compete with the partners that don't. I don't have a solution for that situation, honestly. I sometimes wish Microsoft would go further with the technical enforcement of multiplexing, but so far I don't think anything's happening in that direction.
Basic ruling for it. Okay, hope this is Jeffrey's answers. Thank you very much, Tine. Totally understood. Then we have a question from Sven Hiller. As far as I'm aware, reading data from BC is included in several licenses like Microsoft 365 Business or Enterprise. So as far as the Power App with consume data, I guess no BC license, basic opinion are needed. Has this changed somehow? So here's a little bit my question. There's this new 365 license you can set in the admin center.
So here's how it right now works. The only way how you can access BC data for free, if we call it like that, is through Teams. So I'm not sure which licenses that is. It's Microsoft 365, whichever license gives you access to Teams. Through Teams, you can access BC data for free. In any other matter, you're accessing BC data, you cannot get it for free. So if there's a Power App that reads the data from BC, according to the licensing guide, you need to have a valid license for Business Central as well. However, what I've mentioned in the presentation is the opposite direction. So if you do have a valid Business Central Premium or Essential license, then you do not need an additional Power Platform license. So in the majority of situations, or let's say in all situations, if we exclude the Teams situation, you are going to need some sort of a Business Central license, but then sometimes you do not need an additional Power Platform license.
Yeah, licensing still is complicated. And I hope this answers your question, Sven. Yes, thank you very much, Tine. Then we got another question from Jeffrey. Is it better to use Dataverse or direct API calls when showing BC data in Power Apps or Power BI? At least one. When building Power Platform solutions, That source BC, how do you avoid turning low-code convenience into high-maintenance technical debt? Yeah, waldo question.
I was actually happy that it was licensing question. Well, is Dataverse better or direct API calls? That's, I mean, it depends on the situation. I'm not going to claim anything better on one or the other end. Depends really. API calls makes it an inline kind of thing, and you kind of like step away from the possibility to for the offline mode. So in a way, that kind of like makes me want to go to Dataverse, but again, depends a little bit on what you would like to build.
Okay, thanks. And he was just wondering, so he is very grateful.
When building Power Platform, that was the second part of the question. That touch ABC, how do you avoid turning low-code convenience into high-maintenance technical debt? Well, the thing, we don't. So we build software, so it has a technical debt kind of thing, and then we need to make that maintainable. That's where Tine basically addressed like data collection is key, right? Why do we want to use Power Platform? Well, it's because now we can extend where we can collect that data and how we can collect that data, and even in which circumstance we can collect that data. But that doesn't mean that we can now all of a sudden get away with no technical debt. I mean, that's what we try to explain. You can do Power Platform. You don't just do Power Platform without making a mess. If you do Power Platform because it's low code and you want to take away the technical debt, I mean, then we kind of like didn't succeed in explaining that message.
Maybe just to chime in here, one way how you can avoid turning low code convenience into high maintenance technical debt is you have to be quite aggressive with expectation management. I think that's the most common issue with especially like Canvas apps or Power Apps in general. People start with a simple solution, and Power Platform is great for that. But if you think that you're just going to be adding more and more and more complexity onto that same Canvas app, like you're used to with the Business Central logic, that's how you get into well, high maintenance technical debt. It's better to stick to what the design of that app was and try to design a separate app that has a different purpose instead of trying to build an all-in-one master solution on low code, because that's a sure way to help.
Good, thank you very much. And I think we are closing our session for today. We are 9 minutes over time. Thanks again very much, Waldo and Tine, for your insights. Also, thanks again for Naf for helping us. A kind reminder, here are again our upcoming webinars, and you can register on the Areopa Academy website if you're interested in one of these topics. And if you want to be a speaker or have a topic, please let us know and contact us. Yeah, thanks to the whole Areopa team. And here's a short list of all the things how you can get in contact with us and where you can find all kinds of useful information. So thanks everybody, and see you in the next time.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.